We all tried everything to convince him.
He had it all. The flair, the finesse, the magic. For a time, Philippe Coutinho was the most electrifying player in the Premier League. A wiry Brazilian kid with a smile as wide as Anfield and a right foot that could defy physics. But somehow, that same player ended up lost, forgotten, judged, and exiled by the very dream he chased. This is not a story of failure. It's a story of mismatch. Of what happens when talent meets a machine that doesn't know what to do with it. A story of chasing a crown, only to realize the throne was never built for you. Let's rewind the clock, to when the Premier League had a new prince, and the football world couldn't stop watching. Coutinho arrived at Liverpool in January 2013, signed for just £8.5 million from Inter Milan. At the time, he was a promising but inconsistent talent. Few imagined he'd become the heartbeat of a sleeping giant. But within months, fans knew. There was something different about this kid. He played like he was painting a canvas, not just kicking a ball. Low center of gravity, impossible turns, and a right foot that could curl a shot into the top corner from 30 yards without warning. He didn't just create goals, he created moments. Liverpool, still recovering from years of mediocrity, saw in Coutinho a spark of something more. Under Brendan Rodgers and later Jurgen Klopp, he didn't just grow, he exploded. He wasn't just part of the attack. He was the attack. By 2017, Liverpool's rebirth was in full motion. The front three of Sulla, Firmino, and Maine was forming. Klopp was building something dangerous. And at the center of it was Coutinho, the little magician pulling all the strings. But magic always has a price. And in the summer of 2017, the price came in the form of a phone call from Barcelona. The club of Ronaldinho. Of Messi. Of Neymar. They needed a new star after Neymar's shocking departure to PSG, and they believed Coutinho was the answer. Coutinho didn't just listen. He dreamed. For a Brazilian, playing at Camp Nou wasn't just a transfer, it was destiny. And so, just days before the new Premier League season, he submitted a transfer request. Klopp tried to reason. The fans begged. But Coutinho had already packed mentally. Liverpool rejected offer after offer. They stood their ground. But some forces are too big to resist. In January 2018, the deal was done, £142 million. The second most expensive transfer in football history at the time. It should have been his coronation. Instead, it was the beginning of a long, painful descent. Barcelona wasn't just buying Coutinho's skills. They were buying an image, an answer to Neymar's absence. A big money move meant to impress fans and restore pride. But behind the scenes, it was chaos. The truth is, Barcelona didn't need Coutinho. At least, not that version of Coutinho. They needed structure, control, midfield balance. He was a risk-taker, a chaos merchant, a player built for transition and instinct, not slow possession and patient build-up. In Klopp's system, he was a hero. In Valverde's system, he was a puzzle piece that didn't fit. And while the numbers didn't seem horrible, 10 goals in his first half season, they felt hollow. The spark was gone. The freedom he once danced with had been replaced by hesitation and confusion. Barcelona fans are passionate. But they're also ruthless. They've cheered for genius. They've seen brilliance on a weekly basis. And when Coutinho's magic didn't translate, the love turned cold. Whistles replaced applause. The fans who once adored his long-range screamers now groaned at every misplaced pass. Coutinho looked lost, isolated in a sea of expectation. His trademark smile vanished. The daring attempts disappeared. And with them, so did his confidence. By his second season, he wasn't just underperforming, he was unwanted. A symbol of everything wrong with Barca's recruitment. He became the scapegoat for tactical failures and early Champions League exits. He was never given the space to breathe. And without it, he slowly suffocated under the pressure. In a twist that felt more like cruel fate than storyline, Barcelona loaned Coutinho to Bayern Munich. The same Bayern that would later face Barca in a Champions League quarter-final. That night in Lisbon ended 8-2. Bayern humiliated Barcelona. And to rub salt in the wound, Coutinho, still technically a Barca player, scored twice and assisted another against his parent club. He didn't celebrate. How could he? It wasn't just a victory. It was an obituary. That moment confirmed what everyone already feared: Coutinho was not Barcelona's future. He was its mistake. Bayern declined to make the move permanent. And just like that, he returned to the Camp Nou, not as a hero, but as a ghost. What followed wasn't a comeback. It was a slow-motion collapse. Injuries piled up. The minutes dwindled. Younger stars emerged. The club moved on, but Coutinho couldn't. He was stuck between what he once was and what he could no longer be. Aston Villa, under Steven Gerrard, offered a brief spark. For a few months, we saw glimpses of the old magician, cutting inside, curling balls, dancing with defenders. But it didn't last. Football had moved on. Faster, colder, less forgiving. And Coutinho, he no longer played with joy. He played with fear, of mistakes, of criticism, of becoming irrelevant. And the game has no mercy for players who hesitate. So what happened? Was it injuries? Was it pressure? Maybe. But deeper than that, it was about identity. Coutinho was never meant to be another cog in a system. He was an artist. He thrived in chaos, in spontaneity, in systems that let him improvise. Barcelona tried to force him into a blueprint. But he wasn't built for blueprints. He was built for broken plays, desperate moments, and impossible shots. And when the belief disappeared, from the fans, from the coaches, from himself, so did the magic. Talent isn't always enough. Confidence is the oxygen of great players. Without it, they suffocate. And Coutinho, he choked under a sky that was supposed to shine for him. Now, at 32, Coutinho stands in football's gray zone. Too talented to be forgotten. Too unreliable to be trusted. No longer a prodigy. Not quite a veteran. Just a name in a long list of what could have been. When Liverpool fans remember him, it's with a bittersweet ache. He gave them moments they'll forget. But he also left them at the cusp of glory. Just before they lifted the Champions League. Just before they conquered the Premier League. He left to chase greatness, and watched it slip through his fingers. But make no mistake, Philippe Coutinho's story isn't one of failure. It's a football tragedy. A player born with a gift too fragile for a sport that no longer waits for beauty. He was a magician. But when the crowd stopped believing, he forgot his own tricks. We all want more. More success. More recognition. And in football, more is everything. A bigger club. A higher wage. A brighter spotlight. But what happens when chasing more makes you lose what made you special in the first place? That's what happened to Coutinho. In Liverpool, he was adored. He belonged. The club wasn't perfect, but it fit him. The chaos, the rhythm, the emotion, it was his home. But he traded it for a promise, the more. And that promise lied. He didn't just leave a team. He left an identity. And in Barcelona, surrounded by millions, he became invisible. That's the cost of chasing more. Sometimes, you lose the magic just trying to prove you deserve it. His story is a reminder, for players, fans, and everyone in between. Greatness isn't always where the lights are brightest. Sometimes, it's where you're most believed in. Where you're free to be you. Coutinho chased the world, and in doing so, lost himself. In the end, Coutinho didn't lose his talent. He lost his place. In a football world obsessed with systems, data, and efficiency, there's little room left for artists. He didn't betray Liverpool. He betrayed himself. He believed in a dream that never existed. And for that, he paid the ultimate price, being remembered for what he could have been, not what he was. But those who watched closely, they'll never forget the magic.